can sense by the silence in the room it's a good time to start. So welcome to everyone for our special event, What is the Heart of the Problem? Now, I know people are tuning in online as well, so welcome to you. The only problem with tuning in online, I know that we've got comfortable, but you're missing out on a whole banquet of refreshments. You're missing out on a free book at the end. But on the other hand, we have to apologize to those in the building because the boiler is having a bit of issues. So we hope you're not going to be too cold tonight, but at least we'll keep you awake. I'm going to tell you where the toilets are for those of you here for the first time. So the toilets are basically through there. Ladies is straight on your left. Men's is a bit further and then on your left. So if anyone needs a toilet, feel free to go. What else do I have to say? Mobiles, obviously, keep on silent so you're not embarrassed. And I'm just going to give you a little introduction before we hand over to Alun Ebenezer. So tonight we're looking at a very important topic. You can see by the title, we've got some classic issues that we see with our world: war, greed, hate. Now, the topic we're looking at tonight is what is the heart of it all? So as we look out at our world, we see lots of problems. I'm sure you just turn on the news and you're bombarded with bad news. You can add sexual assault to the list, racism, you name it. And the thing is, we feel strongly about this as human beings. We protest, we want to see change, and yet we can't seem to solve the problem of evil. And it's not just the world, it's not just as you look out at the world, it's actually inside as well. If we look at our own lives, if we're honest, our lives are a mess. We keep making decisions that harm us. We're addicted to things that do us harm in the long run. We're miserable, we're anxious. There's so many, a huge list of problems, even personally. So tonight, we want to ask, what is at the root of it all? What is at the heart of the issue? Now, when we promoted this event in our local area, we were on Twickenham High Street, we were in St. Mary's University, and we got a whole variety of answers to that question. What is the heart of the problem? Now, I'm going to read some out. There was some funny ones, you could say. There were some serious ones. Someone said their biggest problem was the fact that the SU bar was closed on their campus. But then there were serious answers. Some people said greed, racism, police brutality, impatience, no one listens to one another. Discrimination was a huge one that many people said. Intolerance, a word that you hear a lot these days. Now, they are all good answers. But the question we're going to look at tonight is it deep enough? Are any of those issues the heart of the issue? Well, Alun Ebenezer, our speaker tonight, has written a book on this topic, which some of you have received. If you haven't received it, it will be at the back, so feel free to take it on your way out for free. But in this book, Alun is looking at things from a different angle to what we hear today. He is looking at things from a biblical perspective, from the Bible. What does the Bible say in answer to this big question? Now, that's an angle that not many people in our society consider. So the answer that you hear tonight might surprise you, but I also want to say that it can be the greatest news that you will ever hear if you're willing to listen with an open heart and believe it. So I'm going to hand over to Alun. There will be time for Q&A afterwards, by the way. So have a think of questions as he speaks. But I'm going to now hand over to Alun Ebenezer.
Oh, thanks, Joe. I thought you were going to give my talk for me then for 1 minute. So it's nice to see you all. And if you are in Amiens Park, and you usually come to Amiens Park, you will definitely have heard almost everything I'm going to say tonight you've heard before. But I'm not really talking to you. I'm talking to people who might have come here for the first time, might be in touch with Joe, listening online, who are genuinely recognise there's a problem and genuinely looking for an answer to this problem. And I would say that the answer is found in a person. So listen tonight for the next half an hour or so. Listen, I know most of you, I don't know all of you, I certainly don't know people online. I think one thing we'd all agree with is this, though. There's something or lots of things wrong with this world. We'd all agree with that. Okay, whether you are a conservative or a liberal, whatever culture you come back from, you will all agree that there is something or lots of things really wrong with our world. COVID. All right, who's heard of COVID? Bradley's heard of COVID. No one else has. Amazing. We got COVID, okay? You've got everyone's invited. where these girls have been they set up a website because of the rape culture in some of these top independent and state schools in the country. Everyone's invited. Me too. Problem. The fact that a young woman cannot walk home late at night without getting murdered by a policeman. There's a problem. There's problems in the world. Afghanistan, the refugee crisis, terrorism. There's something really wrong with our world. And it's not just the big macro problems. I would say that our marriages, families break up, addiction takes hold of people, pornography dominates the internet. Some of you tonight, you suffer with depression and mental illness and physical illness. There is something really wrong with this world. That's the symptoms. But the problem I think we have is this, and I'm a teacher, and I've been in education all my life. I love the holidays, okay? I love the holidays. But educationists will say, well, we just need better education. Other people say, no, we need better health, or we need better social care. But I would say all those things are just addressing the symptoms. We have to get to the heart of the problem. And I would argue the heart of the problem is the problem of the heart. Okay? That's the heart of the problem. The problem is not necessarily all these symptoms. They're just symptoms. There's a problem at the heart of it all. And unless we get to the heart of the problem, we're never going to solve it. Now, stick with me. I would say that the heart of the problem is that in the very beginning, God made the world. It was perfect. Perfect. He put a man in a garden, his wife, and he said, you can enjoy it all, but just don't eat from this one tree called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Don't eat from that tree. Now, you might be thinking, that's bonkers. That's a fairy tale. That's ridiculous. Well, I'd love to know your better solution. Because I would say that when Adam and Eve took of that fruit and disobeyed God, that everything fell. Creation fell. That's why we have disease and earthquakes and natural disasters, because the whole world fell. But Adam and Eve fell, and as our kind of first parents, it affected all of us. And so all our hearts are wrong. Now, let me illustrate this to you. Can I just say to you, before we go any further, the first half of my talk is pretty bad news and damning. Stick with it, because the second half is phenomenal. All right? It's phenomenal. But you've got to know the first part first. There's a problem. The world fell all the way back in the beginning. And that's why everything went wrong. And most importantly for us is there's something wrong, so we are born wrong. Now, people today say, and I'm a school teacher, like I said, and the idea is it's called growth mindset. And the idea is that you and I can do anything because we're born and we can do anything we want. I would say that's not true. The fact of the matter is, I think we were fearfully and wonderfully made in God's image, but sin has ruined us. There's something wrong with my heart. Let me explain that to you now and give you some examples. Your nature, like my nature, is corrupt. You might be quite offended by that. Well, I'm sorry, you can talk to me afterwards. But you know you're not right. Like me, though, you argue against that because you think of yourself at your best. So you think of yourself when you're at your absolute best. But the real you is you at your worst. So of course we can do good things. Of course when I'm on my best behavior, I can come across well. On Sunday in church, I can look the part, speak the part, I can do it. But that's not me. I teach in a school. The teachers say to me sometimes on a Monday, they say, oh, sorry about Friday, that was the drink. Well, no, that wasn't. That was the real you coming out. Okay? And we are what we repeatedly do. I went on a rugby tour when I was much younger. I went on a rugby tour to Canada. I was a teacher at the time. I was 23, 24. And we went to Canada. And for one day, we played golf. Any golfers here? No golfers. Where's Mike Shannon? He's listening in, I expect. Okay, anyway, we played golf. I've never played golf in my life before or since. I played golf, and there was all these boys, 16-year-old boys, and I was at the tee, and I hit the golf ball off, and it was the most incredible, amazing shot you have ever seen in your life. It just flew through the air, about 250 yards, and it just dropped onto the putting green. And the boys were like, sir, you are a legend. Right? You are a legend, sir. And there were people there in the golf club patting my back saying you're a natural. Well, let me tell you this now. 342 shots later and 12 lost balls, they weren't calling me a legend. Okay? I am capable of the good shot, but that doesn't make me a golfer. I am what I repeatedly do. You are what you repeatedly do. Now, what are you like on your own when no one's watching? Where does your mind go? Imagine you had a day to yourself. You could, and your looks didn't hold you back, money didn't hold you back, and no one's going to find out what you're going to do. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to spend your time thinking about and doing? That's you. You are not you at your best. You are you all the time. We say all the time, don't we, that we want to be better, we want to try and make ourselves better, but we can't. We can't. Because this thing inside us, our nature, it actually controls us. So a man goes into a room, a hotel room, he does a few clicks on his computer, he looks at pornography, he thinks he's in control. What happens? Eventually, pornography gets him. It's a power. And the other thing about us, which I think shows us up really, is the one thing we've all got in common is we're all pretty selfish. All of us. You were born voting for you. I was born voting for me. You know that all the time. I see it every day in the canteen in school when the bell goes for lunch and you've got 800 boys and they don't just sit there thinking, do you know what, I let 799 boys go before me for lunch. They all want to get to the front of the queue. You were the same. If I put a picture on this very, very nice wall at the back here, if I put a picture up of all of you now, who do you look for first? You. What makes it a good picture? How good you look. That's it, isn't it? It's all about, you are all about you, I'm all about me. And sin is deceitful. Our hearts are deceitful. So what's the problem in the world? The problem is my heart, my nature. I'm selfish. And even though I think I'm in control, I'm not. It controls me. And sin is deceitful. You see, the problem is this. You and I find it far easier to do things that are wrong than things that are right. I've never, ever once in my teaching career and as a father had to sit boys down and girls down and say, now let me tell you this. This is how you misbehave. This is how you punch someone in the face when you're angry. This is when you tell a lie to get out of trouble. I've never had to do it. Why? Because it's in their nature. That's what we're like. And sin is deceitful because it makes us think we want things and we can't help but get them, but it doesn't make us happy. I can say to you on Friday nights and Saturday nights in London, you can see this for yourself. People think that they've got to go out, get blind drunk, they've got to have that woman, they've got to have that man, they've got to do shameful things. But then by the end of the night, people are fighting, they're jealous, marriages are broken up, relationships are broken down. I have to have it though. It's deceitful. It makes me think this thing will make me happy, but it doesn't. The journalist Malcolm Muggeridge, he once met a woman who had slept with the writer H.G. Wells. And Malcolm Muggeridge said to this woman, how did it happen? And he said, well, they were in a party, and H.G. Wells said to this woman, let's go upstairs and do something fun. And then he said, and was it fun? And she said, that night, more than any night, ruined my life. You know that, don't you? There's something you had to do, someone you had to have, and you thought it was fun, and it was while it lasted, but it didn't last very long, and now it has completely ruined your life. What's the problem? What's the problem with the world today? Well, the problem with the world today is our hearts on the inside. And it's called sin. You might think that's an old-fashioned word, but let me tell you this. Sin, what does it mean? It means shove off God, I'm in charge. None of us like being told what to do. We all want to do what we want to do. We hate being told what to do. I remember saying to you before in Amy Park, when my wife and I went out for a romantic meal, we've been out for 2 romantic meals in our married life. We've been married nearly 19 years. Once was to Burger King, okay? And the second time was to this really posh restaurant. I think it had a Michelin star, and we were sat at this table, and it was so posh. You know the restaurants, so posh, the plates were hot, okay? They weren't hot in Burger King. They were hot in this restaurant. And we were sat there, and they brought the plates out, and the man, a very nice man, he said, "Sir, don't touch the plate, it's hot." I said, "Oh, I'm going to touch that plate when he's gone, because no one tells me what to do." You were the same. You hate being told what to do, because you're a rebel. And that's the problem with the world. We all want to do what we want to do, and no one's going to tell me any different. But how has it left us? Well, I would say this. If you're like me, it's guilt. American psychologists, British psychologists, they say, the biggest problem in Britain and America today is guilt. You know guilt, didn't you? You wake up in the middle of the night. You remember something you did. Guilt. So I live for myself. I please myself. I'm selfish. I'm a slave to my nature. Where's it got me? I just feel guilty. I feel dirty. There's a singer called Yvette Brothers. She sang a song. She said, "Shame, boatloads of shame, day after day, more of the same, blame, please lift it off, please take it off, please make it stop. Guilt, shame, it's awful." Now, you might be sat there before I come to my next point, and you might be saying, "Well, all right, mate, but I think I'm all right, actually. And I'm not perfect, but who is? But I'm okay. And I compare myself to other people, and I'm not the sort of person who would kill a woman walking home late at night. And I wouldn't be part of this kind of guilty for me too. That's not me." Well, do you really think that if I was to put your life on the screen up here, everything you've done, everything you've seen, every place you've been, everything you've said, if I was to put that up now and say, "Do you know what, I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to show you a life from day one right up till now," I imagine, like me, you'd go to the back and run out as fast as you could. You know you've messed up. You know your heart isn't right. You know that. I taught a boy called Kieran, and Kieran, if you're listening, you remember this? Kieran was the most handsome pupil I've ever taught. He looked angelic, but he wasn't angelic. And he was in a school called Treorchy, which is top of the Rhondda Valley. It was so bonkers, we had to have 44 CCTV cameras around the school. And one day, I just happened to be in the kind of control room, and I looked at the cameras, and there was Kieran, with his little cute face, behind the back of the technology block, smoking away to his heart's content. Little 11-year-old Kieran. So I went to find Kieran. I grabbed him by his cute little neck and took him to the control room. I said, "Kieran, you've been smoking." "No, I haven't, sir." Sir, I am hurt you'd think I'd do such a thing, sir. All right? So I switch on the camera, and I show him smoking behind the technology block. He looks, he said, "Sir, you're right. That does look a bit like me." Okay? Now, you can protest your innocence tonight. But one day, God will call you. And he'll show you your life. Everything. And like me, the verdict will be this. We've all sinned. We've all fallen short of the glory of God. And I would argue tonight, on the authority of the Word of God, the Bible, that the heart of the problem is the problem of the heart. The problem is not out there. The problem is in here. And the problem is made up of 7 billion people on this planet, all with bad hearts. That's the problem. See, G.K. Chesterton, the Times newspaper, many, many years ago, they asked the question, what is the problem with the world? What's the problem with the world? Chesterton wrote back, "Dear sir, the problem with the world, I am." What's the problem with the world tonight? I am. But you might say, okay, well, that's the way it is. And so we've got the symptoms. We found out the problem. But why does it matter? Why does it matter? Well, yeah, it makes life a bit uncomfortable. But why does it matter? Why can't I just please myself and do what I want to do? Why does it matter? Well, because if you think of it as a heart, the symptoms show themselves. The heart of the problem is in here. But the prognosis, what happens in the end, is pretty serious. Because the other thing we've all got in common here tonight is this. One day, every one of us in this room has to die. Every one of us listening tonight, whatever you're doing, one day you will have to die. And unlike an animal which just curls up and dies, when I die, I close my eyes, I open them, and I stand before the judgment seat of God. And I would say to you today, and if you're in universities in particular, God is in the dock, isn't he, of public opinion. He's a kind of topic for us to discuss and debate. But can I say to you, when you stand before God, you will be at his judgment seat. And what you and I think doesn't matter. It's what he thinks. And we'll have to stand at the judgment seat of God, and we have to give an account of everything we've done. Everything we've done. And he will decide whether we go to heaven or whether we go to hell. And if we go to heaven or hell, you go there for eternity. If you live on this life, you live maybe for 70, 80, 90, some people get to 100. That's it. When you go to eternity, you are there forever. And if you die in your sin with this sinful heart, you will hear some chilling words. Depart from me, I never knew you. And you go into an eternal hell. You might not like that tonight on a Tuesday night. You might have come out for a nice cup of tea and have some nice refreshments. But can I tell you, it's my duty to tell you that tonight. It is. It is. It's serious. We're not messing about here tonight. It's serious. The heart of the problem is our heart. The prognosis is really serious. If I die with this heart problem, I could be sent to hell forever and ever. Many years ago, I collapsed. Sounds dramatic, doesn't it? It was dramatic. I collapsed and I smashed my nose on a radiator, and my wife said to me, you need to go to the hospital to sort your nose out. All right? She didn't say it quite like that, all right? She was much more nicer than that. And I went to the hospital, and they said, don't worry about your nose, you've got a problem. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I had to have the camera put down into my stomach. I can't remember what it's called. Endoscopy. Anyone had an endoscopy? Mr. Hemmings has had an endoscopy. Bradley, that's the only time you haven't put your hand up. You haven't had one of those, have you? There we are, good. All right, now then, so I go into the hospital, I have an endoscopy, and the nurse, I think it was a nurse anyway, she said, there was a few of them there, and they said, Mr. Ebenezer, do you want me to put you out, or would you like just to be, would you like to be conscious? I said, oh, put me out, please. Well, anyway, they didn't put me out, and the next thing I knew was, this is honestly true, two nurses grabbed my feet, two nurses grabbed my hand, and I think he was a doctor, but I don't know, had this pole and just shoved it down my throat. That's honestly true. I knew I should have gone private. That's the NHS in Wales, all right? And this doctor was shoving it down my throat. And it lasted for 25 minutes. And I was trying to fight, and they were just holding me down. And then after 25 minutes, they pulled the rod up, and I said, oh, thank you, doctor. And we got on with it. 25 minutes. If you end up in hell, 25 minutes turns to 25 hours, turns to 25 years, turns to 25,000 years, 25 million years, eternity. So this problem is a problem tonight, and we'd all say, no, there's a problem with the world, but do you know what? The world is not a big, the problem is my eternal soul. That's my problem. Now, let me get the good bit as we close. There's a solution to this. So human beings fell, everything fell. The world fell. Natural disasters, illness, disease, mental illness, crime, war, it all went wrong. Me in my personal life, I'm wrong. You know you're wrong, I'm wrong. I think bad things, I say bad things, I do bad things. And the worst thing of all, I don't care about God. I'm a rebel. That's the problem. And the problem with the problem is, it doesn't just last for this life. If I die with this problem, I go to eternal punishment. It's serious. Now, God could have left it all like that. Do you know that? But he didn't. He didn't. He saw the symptoms. He diagnosed the problem, he gave us the prognosis, and then he came with the solution. But what's the solution? Well, 2,000 years ago, a man was born. He's a little baby. He was born in a place called Bethlehem. He was born to a young Jewish girl. He grew up in a really working class home, in a little small house in a northern town called Nazareth. It was rough. It wasn't Twickenham, it was rough. It was rough. And he grew up, and he played on the back streets. He'd have been strong because he was a kind of carpenter. And he never did anything wrong. He was the only one with a pure heart. He never said anything wrong. He never thought anything wrong. He never did anything wrong. He was perfect. When he was 30, he started preaching, and he did miracles and parables. He was a historical figure. There's no serious historian who would doubt his existence. This man really lived. And when he was 33 years of age, he was arrested. And he was arrested in a garden, and they tied him up, and they took him through the streets, and eventually he was tried first by the Jewish authorities, then by Pontius Pilate, then by Herod, then back to Pontius Pilate. He'd done nothing wrong, but he was found guilty. And then he was taken, and he was put into the charge of about 600 Roman soldiers. Now, if you haven't listened to anything else tonight, listen to this bit. They stripped him naked. They took all his clothes off. You know how humiliating that is? We have dreams, don't we, about the worst thing ever is you're in school or in your job and you haven't got any clothes on. They stripped him naked. They got him tied into a pole in a praetorium, and they took a whip and they lashed him 39 times. You could see all his inner organs and his kidneys. They spat in his face. Have you ever been spat at? It's horrible. They spat in his face. They punched him in his face. They put a blindfold on him and spun him round and hit him and told him to guess who'd hit him. He was dehydrated. And then they took him. 4 soldiers would have taken him with his cross. And he had to carry this cross naked through the streets of Jerusalem. And the streets were lined with people. And they laughed at him and jeered at him. And he was so exhausted. The one who had made the heavens and the earth was so exhausted he couldn't put one foot in front of the other. And he collapsed. And a man called Simon of Cyrene had to help him carry his cross. And then they took him and they nailed him to this cross and they dropped it in a socket in the ground. And he hung there for 6 hours. And then when the sun was at its brightest, everything went pitch black. And out of the darkness, this man, he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Where are you? Where are you? Now, what was happening? Well, that perfect man with a perfect heart was also God. The God who made the world became a man, and he hung on a Roman cross. And what he was doing was this: everything that is wrong with my heart and your heart, everything that is wrong in Britain tonight, murder, rape, pedophilia, anger, lust, lies, pride, selfishness, everything was laid on him. He was, in the eyes of God that day, the worst sinner who had ever lived. He took the blame for all of it. My heart is foul. It was laid on him. And then he cried out these words: it is finished. What I meant was this: everything that needed to be done to make your heart and my heart right, he accomplished. That's the gospel. And on that cross, God is angry with our sin today. If you get angry with Sarah Everett's murder, let me tell you this: God is furious. If you get angry with when you look at pictures of Afghanistan, God is furious. But all the people who've done these sins, if they trust in his Son, they can be forgiven. Because on that cross, Jesus Christ was turning away the wrath of God. That's what was happening. On the cross, you might say, well, how does that work? On the cross, Jesus Christ was making atonement. He was making up with God on our behalf. He was putting things right. There's a story told of a chief. He was a good chief. He ran his tribe well. And one day, it was brought to his attention that somebody had stolen some things among the tribe. And the chief said, whoever that is must be beaten. Whoever it is. And they did their kind of investigations, and they found out who it was. And it was the chief's old mother. And he sat on his throne, they all gathered round, and they were about to beat her. And from his throne he said, stop! And he took off his shirt, and he wrapped himself around his mother, and he said, proceed. 2,000 years ago, the anger of a sin-hating God was going to be thrown out on our sinful hearts. And it's the Son of God said, stop. And he came down, and he put on human flesh, and he wrapped himself around everyone who will trust him. And then he said, proceed, I'll take the beating. So that you and I, with the problems of this world, the problems of my heart, can be put right. And I say to you tonight, if you are recognize that you've got a problem, and you recognize that your heart is the problem, and you do things and say things and think things, and you are all these things we talk about tonight, and you can see that the real problem isn't out there, the real problem is in here. If you come and trust in Jesus Christ, you can be made perfect. It is just as if you'd never sinned. And so your sinful life is transferred to Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ's perfect life is transferred to you. Justified, made right. Now, I taught another boy. His name was Jamie Gibbons. Gibbons, if you're listening, here we go. Gibbons had a father, and his father was a bit of a small-time crook in a place called Cwmbran in the South Wales Valley. And this is a very, very true story. Keelan's a true story as well. This is a true story. And one night, Jamie Gibbons, his father, and his mate, they broke into some factories in Cwmbran. And they stole loads of things. And they were caught red-handed. They were caught red-handed with all these things they'd stolen. The police turned up, blah, blah, blah. But Jamie Gibbons, his father, told me this. He said, Mr. Ebenezer, if you get into trouble, you need to get a lawyer called Voby. Okay? Voby, if you're listening, could be business coming your way. Voby. And Voby was so good that when they went to court, his case was so convincing. He said, there's no way my clients could have done this. He was so convincing, Gibbons turned to his mate and said, perhaps we didn't do it. Now, like me, you've got a filthy heart. Your heart's the problem. But if you trust in Jesus Christ, when you come to that final day of judgment and you are clothed in his righteousness, you'll think, perhaps I didn't do it. Made right, made perfect. Now, time's against me. You might say, well, how can I trust this solution? Well, because Jesus Christ died on the cross, and he didn't stay dead, he rose again. And I would say to you tonight that the reason why I'm a Christian is because there's things I've done which need to be forgiven, and it's true. And the reason I know it's true is because I've investigated the resurrection, and it really stacks up. That this Galilean carpenter really died and really rose again. And you're very welcome afterwards to ask me why I think the resurrection stacks up, but we haven't got time to go into that tonight. But I do think the most compelling reason of all is this. If he didn't rise from the dead, where's the body? Where's the body? You can easily disprove Christianity by just finding the body, but no one ever has. There's a story told, isn't there, about a Hindu and a Christian who are on a boat. And the Hindu says to the Christian, over there is the bones of my Savior. And the Christian said, if you could find the bones of my Savior, he wouldn't be my Savior. He rose again. Now, as I close, what should you do? The heart of the problem is the problem of the heart. We live in a world where there's lots and lots of problems, real problems. Some of you are really suffering. Your families are suffering. But the problem with it all is my heart is sinful and dirty. The prognosis is petrifying. I have to stand at the judgment, and God will decide my eternal destiny. The great news is he has provided a solution. He came down. He died on a cross to put you and I right. Now, what should you do tonight? Well, you can argue, you can protest, you can debate, or I would say this: just come to the doctor. Come to the doctor. Come to the Lord Jesus Christ. What we are saying tonight is not a religious kind of setup. It's not some creeds. It's not a kind of way of life that we think is really good and works. It's a person. It's a person. And I'm saying to you tonight, if you want your heart to be right, come to the doctor. Now, there's reasons why people don't go to the doctor. Some people don't go to the doctor because they're too frightened to go to the doctor. But can I say, you haven't got to be frightened of Dr. Jesus. You haven't. He listens. He's kind. He's patient. If you came to him tonight, in whatever state you are in, you can just talk to him. Go into your bedroom tonight, get on your knees, or sit in your chair, and just tell him everything. Tell him about the mess you've made. Tell him about the things you're frightened of. Tell him about the things you don't understand. Tell him about the things that make you angry. Just talk to him. And you will find that he is kind and patient, and he listens. Some people don't go to the doctor because they think they're too bad to be cured. But can I say to you, everyone who's been to this doctor, he's never failed with anyone. There's a plumber in Coventry, and on the side of his van it says this: "No hole is too dark, too dirty, or too deep that we can't reach." Okay? This doctor says there is no heart that's too dark, too dirty, or too deep that I cannot cure. That's what this doctor does. When we lived in Cardiff and Jack was very little, and he was about 2 years of age, we were on this kind of beach, and he was running down this jetty. And obviously running down the jetty in towards the sea, and his little legs kept going faster and faster, and he couldn't stop. Now, I was younger then, all right? I was 6 foot, loads of hair, you can imagine, all right? And I ran down like David Hasselhoff, okay? And I sprinted past him faster, and I scooped him up and took him home to safety. My sin is going out of control, is abounding. But this doctor, his grace, his kindness, his forgiveness, is superabounds, it's faster. However bad you are not too bad to be cured. Some people say, I'm not going to the doctor because I'm going to wait till I feel a bit better. Okay, I'm going to make myself a bit better. Just come as you are. Just come as you are. Don't make yourself better. Some people say, don't they, I'm in such a bad state, I'm just going to sort my life out a bit. I'm going to do a little bit towards this. Just come as you are. With all your mess, with all your guilt, with all your shame. He specializes in messy, dirty, sinful cases. Just come to him. My dad was a minister in Pontypridd, a place called Pontypridd. There was a tramp called Frank. Pretty sure Frank's not listening, so that's fine. Frank was a tramp. He used to come to my dad's church every Sunday night, smelling a drink. Sometimes he'd even have flagons with him, and he'd fall asleep sometimes. He was dirty and smelly, and then all of a sudden he stopped coming. And one night my father was driving around Pontypridd on the way home. And he came past the bus station. It was tipping down with rain. And there was Frank queuing for the bus. So my father spun the car around and said, "Frank, get in." So Frank got in the car. He said, "Frank, where have you been? Where have you been?" He said, "Well, some of your deacons said to me to stop coming until I'd smartened myself up and wasn't smelling the drink." My father was furious. Jesus Christ wouldn't say that. He'd say, "Come with your smelly, filthy, messed up life, stinking of drink, with all your addictions, come to me." As I close, some people don't go to the doctor because they ignore the need to. They know there's something wrong, but they don't want to face up to it. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because the one thing we've learned from COVID, isn't it, is death is all around us. But you think death happens to somebody else. But one day it will happen to you. And one day, in 100 years' time, every one of us in this room would have stood before God. Do you know that? Every one of us. Don't put off going to the doctor. Just come to him. Some people, there's a particular reason why they don't go to the doctor. And maybe that's the reason tonight. You think, well, actually what you've said makes sense. I know that I've got something wrong. I know I've got to die. I don't want to go to a lost eternity. But there's this one thing in my life I don't want to give up. Maybe it's a person, a relationship, a particular sin, a particular habit. You don't want to give it up. Can I ask you, in 100 years' time, will it be worth going to a lost eternity for? The Bible says, what would it profit a person if they were to gain the whole world, but they lost their soul? Come to the doctor. Come as you are, say how sorry you are, and put your faith in Jesus Christ. In my school once, the footballer Tony Adams came. Do you know Tony? Who knows Tony Adams? Anyone remember Tony Adams? That shows you a bit older, right? Tony Adams, he was the England football captain, and he was the Arsenal captain. They won the double. He was called Mr. Arsenal. There's a big kind of statue of him outside Highbury. He was an absolute legend. He had over 80 caps. He was in the 96 semi-final. I think that's one of the best England have ever done. I don't know. Tony Adams. But Tony Adams was an alcoholic. He came to my school. He was a lovely man, and we chatted for ages. And he said, "Alan, I remember the time when I knew I was an alcoholic, and I had to go to Alcoholics Anonymous in Fulham, and I had to sit in a room, a bit like this, sit in a room. We sat in a circle. He said, I was the England captain. I was the Arsenal captain. We'd won the double. I was an Arsenal legend, and I had to sit in this seat. I had to say this. My name's Tony. I'm an alcoholic. I don't know what you are tonight. I thought it was on this, but I saw when this was given out about who I was, it said all sorts of things. Can I tell you what I am? My name's Alan. I'm a sinner. That's what I am. My heart's not right. That's me. That's you, isn't it? I would say bring your dirty heart, which is the problem underneath all of it, and say to Jesus Christ tonight, save me. Save me. I can't save myself. I can't make myself better. I can't clean up my act. Just save me. And whoever comes to him, he will never turn away. And there's no case he looks at and says, it's too much for me. He can save to the uttermost. He can take the worst heart tonight and he can make it well. The heart of the problem is the problem of the heart. But there's a doctor, a heart specialist, who can make you right tonight. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you so much to Alan. What you've heard tonight is essentially the Bible message, the gospel, good news for the world. And maybe you've listened to that tonight and you have questions in this room. We've thrown open for a little Q&A. Now, if no one's got questions, I might throw the one that Alan hinted at, which was, why is the resurrection true? But before we get to that, does anyone have any questions? Now is the time to ask. Don't be shy. You can put your hand up and I will ask a question for you from the mic. Well, you've had your chance. So I'm going to throw to Alan for the last, say, 5 or 10 minutes. Why is the resurrection true? Why does it stack up for you?
Okay, it won't take 10 minutes. For me, I think the resurrection is true because people who disagree with the resurrection say it didn't happen. They've got their theories, okay? But I just don't think they stack up. Some would argue that Jesus Christ didn't really die on the cross. He just kind of passed out and then he kind of revived. But that's rubbish because when the Roman soldiers came and they saw the other 2 criminals, they saw they were alive. And they smashed their legs because they had to be killed by 6 o'clock because it was the Jewish Sabbath. When they came to Jesus Christ, he was already dead. And the centurion confirmed it, and he even got to Pontius Pilate, and Pontius Pilate confirms he's dead. He definitely died. So that's rubbish. Other people say, well, the women, they must have gone to the wrong tomb. But the Bible was very careful to record on the Friday night they died, the women watched carefully to see exactly where the tomb was. So that's not true either. Okay? Some people say that the disciples, I think this is the most ridiculous one of all, some people say the disciples came and they stole his body. But guarding the tomb would have been at least 12 soldiers. Okay? And when the body went, the Jewish authorities, and this is historians outside the Bible will talk about this, people like Trypho will say that they made up this story to say, when they come and ask you about it, we will say that the soldiers fell asleep and the disciples came and stole the body. Now, my argument would be this. If you read the New Testament, you will find that the disciples are not the most switched on, dynamic people, okay? They were like us. They made mistakes. They were fishermen by and large. Do you really expect that 11 Galilean fishermen could sneak past trained, hard Roman soldiers and steal a body, move a big stone, steal a body, and walk away with it? And the point is this, if that did happen, then how did the soldiers know it happened if they'd fallen asleep? It's impossible. So I would say that when people give their theories for why the resurrection didn't happen, I don't think they stack up. Whereas the evidence for it is really, really quite compelling. The fact that the New Testament, it uses women as the first witnesses. Now, this is 1st century Israel. It's not Me Too and everyone's invited and International Women's Day. In the 1st century, women, a Jewish man would say every day, I thank God I wasn't born a woman. Imagine saying that today. Boosh. They would say things like, a woman can't stand up in a court of law because she can't be trusted. So the fact that the New Testament uses women as the first witnesses, there's only one reason for it. They really saw it. I would say that people say the fact that the story wasn't embellished is quite striking evidence. If Hollywood were doing the resurrection, they would have done it much different. They would have done the resurrection and seen Jesus Christ rising. They would have seen the descent of the angel. We could have watched the moving of the stone. You would have seen Jesus Christ being resuscitated in the tomb. Why isn't any of that recorded? Well, because they didn't see it. They only record what they saw. And I would argue, perhaps the most compelling argument of all, is the effect that the disciples, it had on the disciples. These men in the New Testament, when Jesus Christ was arrested, they just abandoned him. They were scared, petrified cowards. They all go to their own homes and they lock the door and they're petrified of the Jewish leaders. Why would they make up a story? Why would they all go to their death? These petrified people, why would they do it? There's only one reason. Because they saw the risen Jesus Christ. If I didn't believe in the resurrection, I would not be stood here tonight talking to you. I'd be at home having a cup of tea and chilling out. I wouldn't be wasting my time. This really happened. And do you know, I think the reason why people don't believe the resurrection is because they can't afford for it to be true. Why do people, you go into a shop and you see things like, you see all the cigarettes behind the counter and you see things saying smoking kills and smoking ruins your lungs, and yet people still buy cigarettes because they want to smoke cigarettes. They don't want to face up to the truth. And I would say to you that the reason why people don't believe the resurrection is because if the resurrection's true, I have to bow the knee and trust Jesus Christ.
Thank you so much, Alan. I think that answer was conclusive. If anyone has any other questions, there's time afterwards. There's going to be refreshments handed around. You can come and chat to Alan. He'll be around for a bit. We will be having refreshments handed to you guys, so you can stay where you're seated. There's a whole load of snacks, cakes, hot drinks, you name it. So they're going to be handed around. So stay where you are. They're going to come to you. And thank you so much for coming tonight. This book is at the back on your way out. So if you have not got this book, this is what Alan has been speaking about tonight. So you can read it for yourself. They're all either side of the back doors there. So take one on your way out. Take one for a friend, even if you want to give it away. There is one more special event to mention, which is coming up on the 12th of November. And it will be here. It will be in the evening again, I think 7:30. It's called Who Am I? So we're looking at what is our identity? So that's another very important question. So again, there's some invites there on the way out for you to take. And our Sunday services, for those of you that don't know, 11 and 6:30 p.m., 11 a.m., 6:30 p.m. So please come join us on Sundays if you're ever around. But we just want to thank you all for coming and joining us tonight. Again, stay seated and refreshments will be handed around to you. Thank you to Alan as well.